All right, good morning or afternoon, everyone. This is Shannon. If at any point I am too loud or too quiet for you, you can go ahead where Lara said you could raise your hand, and there is a button where you can say that you need me to speak louder or softer. There's a good chance that that has more to do with your audio settings, though, but I did want to point it out just so that I can try and keep a tab on that. And then also, I tend to get really excited when I do these presentations on our lovely wildlife. So you can also indicate if you need me to speed up or slow a little bit down. And Lara will keep an eye on your questions for me. All right. So today's topics, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about where Florida bears are, how they act, what they look like, some basic bear biology. We're going to talk about the difference between a bear sighting and a bear conflict, and then we're also going to talk about how you as a resident can help our Florida bears. There are lots of things that you can do at your own home and within your own neighborhood or community to help our Florida bears out and reduce the number of conflicts that we may have in the future. So this is a lot. I'm not going to read it to you, but this comes directly off of the Florida Fish and Wildlife website, and it's basically explaining why we have a bear resurgence and then also some increase in bear conflict that you might have noticed if you've been watching the news in the past couple of years. So the basic here is that there are a lot more people than there used to be. Our bears are also doing a lot better than they used to do, and we're sprawling out into their habitat. So when you add all those things together, we do really have a situation on our hands where unless we are proactive and do something about it and really try to coexist with our bears, there is the potential for a lot of bear conflict there. And as it indicates, our population is definitely projected to keep expanding, and our habitat restoration and bear conservation has been effective as well. So we are also anticipating that the bear population will increase. I'm going to go ahead and take a moment now to mention that we are not going to be discussing the hunt or bear hunting as a management tool during this webinar. That is something that if you have questions about, I strongly encourage you to reach out to your local Florida Fish and Wildlife regional office, and I'll provide those phone numbers and emails at the end because it's the same place that we'd like you to report any human-bear conflict, but we're not going to be talking about bear hunting today. It's just simply not something that we can cover in the time frame allotted. So where are our bears? If you're native to Florida, if you've been here since birth, or if you're a recent transplant, you might not know where our bears are, even if you have been here for a long time. So where our bears are, these are the habitats that we currently have, and this is just an estimate of the actual range of the bear. Now there are two different types of habitat range here, and those are the primary bear range and the secondary bear range. The primary range is all of those spots marked in green, and these are areas that routinely have female bears with cubs in them. So this is a habitat that not only is supporting a bear population, but has all of the needs that a bear might have for food, shelter, and water. And it's an area that you're routinely going to see. If you see a bear, you will stand a better chance of seeing a female or a female with cubs. Now the secondary bear range, the tan area, these are areas that the males are very well known to be established, and they may be roaming around looking for food, establishing their territory, or simply looking for other females. Now I do want to mention that these bear ranges are not concrete. Bears don't understand political boundaries, and they don't understand where they're supposed to be and where we say they are and all those different things. So these ranges are just an estimate of where bears are most likely to be seen, but they are definitely, you're definitely possibly going to see them in other areas of the state. So we're going to have our first poll question now. So if you're listening but are clicked over onto something else, go ahead and come back for a second. And what I'd like you to go ahead and answer are which are found around the state, which bear management unit has the most human-bear conflict reports. And Lara, did I set that up correctly? Okay, excellent. I'll give everyone just a couple more seconds, but I think that might actually be everyone. So let's go ahead and end the poll and broadcast the results. Okay, so most people guessed the Central Bear region with the Western Panhandle coming in second, and it is in fact the Central Bear region, and that region is the one right there in the northeast section of the state, but that includes the Ocala National Forest, which is why you might see more conflict there than in the East Panhandle, which is actually our second largest conflict area, not the West Panhandle. And the reason for that is the Ocala has a lot of recreation in it. It's nearby to a lot of cities, and the bear range there, when they're done with the population study, is expected to be expanded on this map here. So there are a lot of bears in the Central Bear Management Unit, and a lot of people living in that area as well. So that's the main reason why they have more conflict than the Panhandle. There's just more people in the area. So keeping our bear management units in mind, I'm going to keep them there in the corner. This is an estimate of the amount of actual habitat for each bear, or for the bears in the area. So as you can see, while we have the majority of conflicts in the Central Bear Management Unit, it's not the area that has the most habitat acreage available. And so, excuse me, when you look at this, you might actually be surprised at how much acreage is available in various parts of the state, especially down in the south area. But you have to keep in mind that a lot of the south area includes areas that are very, very rural or agricultural in nature. So these are the reasons for calls, and I know that this is a difficult graph to read, but I want to draw your attention to the red section of the pie. That is saying that roughly 30% of the bear reports that FWC has fielded from 1990 to 2014 have been related to bears being in garbage. And so regardless of the bear management unit, almost one third of their phone calls are related to bears being in garbage. We're going to talk about that more extensively later, but I just wanted to draw your attention to that part. The other reasons people call are seeing bears in the area or the yard or tree. That accounts for almost 40% of the calls. And it's also important to note that very few of these reports have anything to do with an aggressive bear. So that would be a threatened human or a threatened or killed pet or animal nearby, and both of those categories combined are still less than 3%. So we have an estimate of 1% for threatened or attacked animal and 1% for threatened human. And remember, this goes through 2014. It does not include 2015. Roughly 10% of them have had to do with sick or injured or dead bears. This does include roadkill reports. And the other 10%, which is the other larger section of pie, is property damage or apiary damage. And so an apiary, if you're not familiar with it, are when people are keeping bees either for professional or hobby reasons. And this shows the disproportionate number of bears which are killed in the central region of the state due to roadkill. Over the last 15 years, it's estimated that about 2,500 bears have been struck and killed by cars. We are bears' really only predator in the state of Florida. And so the East Panhandle and the Central Panhandle, if you'll recall, are also the areas that had the most bear calls or bear reports in the state. And it makes sense that those areas would also see the larger number of road kills, because that means that there are more people in the area, there are more cars, and also when a bear is struck and killed, again, that is a reason that people call in and report them. Okay, so we're going to move on to bear biology and behavior, and I'd like to preface this with letting you know that, like all of our webinars, these are an introductory type of education, and really encourage you to ask some questions at the end, and if I'm not able to answer them, we'll definitely find those answers for you or redirect you to someone who can answer that question. So we're going to go ahead and ask another question here, a poll question. And that question is, true or false, climbing a tree will keep you safe from a bear? All right, we got about 2/3 of the people have replied. I'll give you just another second and then I'll share the results with you. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Most of you guessed correctly in that it is false. Bears are very good at climbing trees, and so wanted to go ahead and get that question there. So as you can see, our bears are very good at climbing trees. They have very strong legs, great claws that really help them grip trees. A lot of people think that they can only climb trees that are very wide or that have good thick bark on them. But as you can see with this picture on the left, the bear is quite fine at climbing that skinny little tree there. Now, I don't know how far he'll make it, but they are very capable of climbing trees. And this one on the right, we'll get into what they look like in just a second, but you can tell by his large ears that he is a younger bear, and he is, as you can see, having no trouble hanging out in those trees right there. So Florida black bears, they are the only bear species that we have in Florida, and they are usually black, and they've got that brown snout or muzzle on them there. They do occasionally have a white or blonde patch on their chest, and sometimes, depending on the time of the year, they can appear to be a dark brown color across their body, but for the most part, the black bears you're going to see are going to be entirely black with that possibility of a patch on the chest and the brown snout. So Florida black bears, they like to hang out in trees. Like we said, that's one of those bigger trees. They also just like to hang out. They're pretty calm animals. They're solitary by nature. As you saw on the map I showed earlier, they do have large home ranges. Male bears have a much larger range than females, but overall they can travel extremely large distances in relatively short time frames. This is one reason that relocation of bears is tricky for Florida Fish and Wildlife. They have tracked bears that have been relocated up into the Panhandle, coming back to the Ocala region in less than 2 weeks. And so they really can travel quite far, and they're really good at being stealthy, so we don't always see them. One of the ways that bears are slowed down when they're moving across the state is actually through our highway system. So unfortunately, our highway system kind of acts like a filter and slows that movement down, but that's because they're pretty smart and they don't want to run out there. But they do, and that's not a great thing for us or for them. So we are starting to see those populations expand out of the ranges, as I indicated earlier. And the reason for that is they are really great at going really far distances. So the one time where you might actually see them in groups are when there's a lot of food around or during mating season. So during mating season, they're together for obvious reasons, but they might also still have cubs with them, in which case they may be in family units. If an area has a large source of food, like a human garbage can, for instance, there is a chance that they will tolerate each other a lot better and hang out in the same area. They don't like to share their food, so there has to be a lot of it to keep them all in one area. So Florida black bears are also very naturally skittish. They're fearful of people. They don't really have a large predator that they need to look out for, but they're also not really out looking for a fight. They're primarily driven to find food, and so anytime that they can find food, that's what they're looking for. Bears can smell food from over a mile away, and they will go to extreme lengths to get to it. They're not necessarily out attacking things or people as much as might seem at times. So I just wanted to show these two pictures because the one on the left obviously is an adorable little cub. Still has some of his brown in his ears there. And then we've got a nice, large, lazy bear taking a nap in the tree. This is quite a common sight if you see them out in the forest. just gave away the answer. Okay, well, in case you weren't paying super close attention, we're going to ask another poll question here on what the bear's primary source of food is. So if you go ahead and answer that poll question for me real quick. Oh, wow. You guys are either really smart or really paying attention. Everyone is getting it right, and so I'll go ahead and just broadcast the results now. A bear's primary food source is going to be plant material. So they are omnivores. They will eat other meat if they can find it. They will definitely eat insects, but primarily speaking, they're going to be eating acorns, nuts, other vegetation, and berries. And so they do like saw palmetto berries. They will also eat the insects hanging out near the saw palmetto berries, and they will eat meat, but that's usually just by scavenging. Now the exception to this is they like human food, and it's really no secret why. In the black bear documents on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, one of the documents I've uploaded, or rather Lara uploaded for me, is called Bear Calories Per Human Food. If you take a look at that, what you'll see is how many acorns a black bear must find and eat to equate some of our human foods. So one that sticks out in my mind is 384 acorns for one loaf of bread. So knowing that bears are relatively solitary and they are driven by food, it's no secret that they would be really after human food. So our female bears are usually between 125 and 250 pounds, where the male bears can start at around 250 and will go up to 450. Please note the record weights here. The largest female bear recorded was about 400 pounds, and the largest male bear was 760 pounds. That 760-pound bear was just found a little while ago, a couple months ago, I believe, in Seminole County, and they actually found a 740-pound bear at the same, relatively the same time. So you can go ahead and use the chat box. What do you think would allow these bears to get to almost twice their average natural weight? Yes, they're eating just like us. We have lots of human food available to the bears in residential areas, especially in rural areas where garbage pickup might not be as regular, or they might actually have dumpsters for the areas. So people food is really, really most likely to blame in this instance. And I also wanted to share with you the average range of a female or a male bear. 60 square miles is quite a large area for a bear to roam. And so I bring this up because when we have a large population of bears in an area, the reason they're spreading out is because they have their own home range and they're solitary. So simply having a lot of bears in one area isn't the only reason that they're spreading out. It's because they need that territory. And that's to find natural food. Now, they do prefer natural food when it's there, but that's because people food, hopefully, comes with some scary people as well. So mating season is June through August, and they tend to have their cubs in late January or early February. Bears do not hibernate truly in Florida, but they do den down for the winter. And so males and females who are not pregnant will only den down for about a month. What they'll do is they'll pat down some vegetation, make a little comfy cozy area for themselves for about a month. But if it's a pregnant female, they will den for the whole winter, and that's where they will give birth to their cubs. So pregnant females tend to do a little bit better job of finding a secure den, or one that's hidden better from other predators in the area, specifically other bears who might go after her cubs. The cubs will stay with that mother for about a year and a half. So they're born in winter, and then the cubs will stay with the mother until the second summer. And during that year and a half, that mother bear teaches the young cubs where to find food. So if that mother bear is already accustomed to human food and knows where to find it, all of a sudden their cubs will know as well. So it's a perpetual problem that we're going to be dealing with. Florida black bears become mature at about 3.5 years as far as reproduction is concerned, and they are capable of having a litter approximately every other year or so, and that makes sense when you consider how long they hold on to their cubs. So we're going to talk slightly about bear sightings or bear conflicts. There is a difference between the two. So if you think back to our pie chart on bear reports, there were almost as many sightings, or there were more sighting reports than conflict reports if you look just at garbage. But if you look at all of the reports, we are primarily calling over conflicts. What's the difference between a sighting and a conflict? It really has to do with what's going on. And so bears, like I've been saying, they're very curious, they're hungry, they're not really into people, people are kind of scary. But encounters or sightings from a safe distance should be something you enjoy. It's something really cool, something a lot of people have waited their whole life to encounter, and they haven't had that opportunity yet. Now, they might have a better chance now that our bear population is doing so much better, but the thing to keep in mind here is that a bear sighting should not be a scary thing. So when you're thinking about calling, if you're out hiking and you're in their habitat and you see them, you might not need to call FWC. If they're in your neighborhood, you might want to consider calling FWC because there's a good chance that it's actually a conflict or a conflict about to happen. Depends on your neighborhood though. If your neighborhood is one of the larger ranchette style neighborhoods that's out in the forest, seeing them in your yard might not be such a big deal. So you never want to approach or surprise a bear. This goes whether you're in your neighborhood or if you're out hiking. For both of those, you want to make sure that the bear knows that you're there, but if it's affecting its behavior, say it's huffing and puffing or pawing at the ground, you are way too close. That is how a bear will let you know that it's not happy that you're near it. Also, if you're in a neighborhood, say you're walking your dog or going for an afternoon walk with your kids, you'll want to make sure to keep your surroundings in check. You want to make sure that you don't accidentally walk between a mother and her cubs. They might be on opposite sides of the street, for instance. So you just want to keep that in mind. All right, so awesome. Bears are cool. I shouldn't panic, I get that. But you probably also don't want them in your yard. So there are a lot of things that you can do to keep them out of your yard. The first one, as you can see in this bottom right-hand corner picture, is you don't want to let the bears get into your garbage. I think I've probably said that about 10 times already this webinar, but garbage is where they find all the goodies that we leave behind. And just because we're not interested in eating it does not mean a bear is not interested in eating it. And remember, they can smell their food from a mile away. So you also want to consider wildlife feeders and keeping your pet food indoors. When I say wildlife feeders, I'm talking about the little wooden things that hold a corn cob so that you can feed the squirrels, bird feeders. If you're ever interested in finding some entertaining YouTube videos, you can definitely check out YouTube and Google or search on YouTube bears getting into bird feeders. They will literally crawl across a rope to get to the bird feeder. So there are wildlife feeders that are bear resistant, and I've included a PDF to that from FWC. It's down in that document page again. And then you'll want to make sure you keep all your pet food indoors. So even if you feed your pet inside, there's a chance that you might keep their food outside the back door or in a back shed that's not particularly secure. So you want to keep all pet food inside. This doesn't matter what kind of pet food it is. There's no difference to a bear whether it's dog food or cat food. Some of you may have seen on the news recently a bear waited outside a garage door for it to open, or left it open. I'm sorry, someone left their garage door open. And the bear snagged a 20-pound bag of dog food, went out back, ate the whole thing, took a nap, got up, double-checked there was no food left in it, and then wandered on about his merry way. 20 pounds of dog food is a lot of acorns, so we want to try and keep that pet food indoors. Now, a bear that's going into a garage is already accustomed to people and where people keep food, so that's an issue on a whole nother level. But just imagine if you're keeping that food outdoors or feeding your pets by leaving a dog dish or a cat dish outside, that's problematic. And it's also important to note that that is now illegal to do. If you leave a dish outside with food in it and it's attracting bears, you can get in trouble for that sort of thing. FWC is a very reasonable organization, and the first time they come out, they will definitely work with you to solve the issue. So don't worry if you have to call FWC because someone in your neighborhood is leaving pet food out and it's attracting bears. They're not going to get a ticket most of the time that first time the FWC comes out. It's important to remember that bears are very smart, they're very stubborn, and they're smart enough to be lazy. So we don't want to let bears associate your yard, garage, shed, or backyard with food. So this picture on the left is a bear that is clearly being totally okay with being in a neighborhood. That's a house on the left-hand side, and he's standing on a sidewalk. So this is something that we want to discourage. You can tell by the size of his ears that he is a pretty big bear, because his ears look very small in relation to the rest of his body. So we just want to make sure that we treat bears with the respect that they deserve and not allow them to become accustomed to human food. So we want to reinforce a bear's timid nature, and the way you do that is called Scare That Bear. And we have recommendations from Florida Fish and Wildlife in that document bin down in the bottom left there. And so before you scare the bear, you're going to want to make sure that the bear has an easy escape route and that you are in a secure area. You do not want to be between the bear and the forest if the bear is going up against your house. So back away slowly, get to a safe area, and then make as much noise as you can. You can also use sprinklers, hoses, water guns, whatever you have, bang pots and pans together, use an air horn. Depending on the area, you might want to even consider more extreme measures, and FWC has plenty of recommendations for that. Then we've got one final question for you here as a poll question, and that is, if I am attacked by a bear, what should I do? All right, so we've got about half of people. If we could just get a couple more votes. All right, so I'll take that. That's about 15 people. So this is something that is the #1 myth, in my opinion, on what you should do if you're attacked by bears. Playing dead is not a great idea. So if you think back to when we talked about what bears eat, what's the only type of meat that they usually go after? Anyone want to give a guess in the chat box? Right, they're scavengers. So if you play dead, you're the type of meat that they go after. So we want to make sure that we are not playing dead if we're attacked by bears. The correct answer here, as recommended by FWC and by UF biologists, is to fight back aggressively. You want to make sure that that bear knows that you are not going to be easy prey. So you're going to fight back, hit it, yell at it, scream at it, do whatever you need to do. It's obviously not going to be an easy thing to do. But when it comes between being attacked by a bear and not doing anything, I hope I would choose to fight back. And so keeping that in mind, that they don't like to chase their prey. They don't like to have to work for it. Make it understand you're not easy prey, and you have a much better chance of surviving and thriving. So if attacked, fight back aggressively. If you live in an area where bear encounters or threatening bear encounters occur, make sure that your family and friends know this as well. In this group here, which I would say are people who are already interested in bears and likely know a lot of the stuff we've been teaching, it was still the most commonly chosen answer was to play dead. So just make sure your friends and family are aware of this as well. And then so, will a bear attack my pet or child while we're out walking? It's unlikely, but anything is possible, especially if you get between a mother and her cubs. There are pet attacks, but FWC says that most of those are most likely a dog being aggressive towards a bear or attacking a bear first. And so the best thing you can do is pick up your child. If it's a small pet, go ahead and pick up the pet and keep your pet on a tight leash. I do want to say this is assuming the bear has not attacked either your child or your pet. And the reason for that is a child, if a bear is looking threatened, the child may run, and running is what you do not want to do because that will trigger or could trigger the predatory response. So what you want to do is keep them close, and then there are some things you can do to reduce the chances of being attacked should you find yourself in a bad situation. So if you encounter a bear at close range, there are some things you can do for your safety. You want to try to stay calm. I understand that's a very difficult thing to do. You want to avoid making eye contact whenever possible. Look at the bear's feet or the rest of the body if you're trying to assess whether or not it's an issue. But you're going to want to make yourself look big and scary. Talk to the bear in a low voice. Back away from the bear slowly. Don't turn your back, but back away slowly from the bear. And these recommendations are aimed at telling the bear that you are not a threat and that you are not food. And so by holding your pet or keeping it on a tight leash and picking up your child, you prevent them from running away from that bear, which could trigger a response. If a bear stands up, a lot of people are afraid of bears standing up because in the movies it's often portrayed as an aggressive behavior or something that is a sign that the bear is about to attack. More likely, it's that the bear is trying to see you better and get a feel for its surroundings, try and figure out where its exit strategy is. But a bear standing up is not an aggressive behavior for the Florida black bear. That may not be true for other species of bears, but for the Florida black bear, they are simply curious and they're trying to figure out what's around them. There are aggressive behaviors that bears make. They will pop their jaw, they'll huff at you, they'll stomp the ground. They may even do a bluff charge, in which case they will run at you and then stop. I have not been charged, but many of our local biologists have, and so they can explain that situation to you better should you be afraid of it happening. Go ahead and call FWC. They'd be more than happy to explain that situation to you better. But in general, there's 4 things you want to do. Stay calm, don't make eye contact, be big and loud, and back away slowly. So how can you help bears in Florida? What we need to do is we need to make sure that we appreciate and understand the difference between an encounter and a conflict. An encounter in their habitat is something where we just need to be mindful of and let them do their thing and get out of their way. Bear conflict is where they might pose a threat to you, your family, your neighborhood, anything like that, in which we want to try to avoid as best as possible. You want to secure your garbage and wildlife feeders. This includes pet food. So the number 1 reason that bears come into neighborhoods is seeking food, just like anywhere else in the state. And so that's the best thing that we can do to keep them out of our neighborhoods. If you live deep in bear country, consider an unwelcome mat or other bear deterrent measures. An unwelcome mat is basically a piece of wood that has nails facing upwards. Bears are light on their feet, and so they'll test it before they step on it. But that's only if you're really concerned about a bear getting into your home. And then last but not least, scare that bear after you make sure you're in a safe location. If you think anyone's feeding them, go ahead and call Florida Fish and Wildlife. That hotline is 888-404-3922. And then the last thing I wanted to tell you, these are your regional offices that you should call if you have any local human-bear conflicts. If you have bears in your area, or if you have seen bears getting into garbage or pet food, please make sure to call the FWC office near you. Remember, they are not out to write everyone a ticket. They will come out and they'll work with you and help educate your neighbors, if necessary, on how to best keep control of food in the area. So that's all I have. I'm going to go back to answer some questions now. Lara, are there questions that I should be focusing on?
Yeah, there was a question about if the information that you were providing kind of on how to fight back against the black bear and things like that, if that was specific to the Florida black bear as opposed to other bear species. So I didn't know if you know that answer. I mean, that's the only bear species we have in Florida, so I just wasn't sure if you had more details on that.
Yes. This information, the what to do if you're attacked and how to avoid being attacked, those are specific to Florida black bear. That is the only species of bear we have in Florida, so that is what I focused on today. For other species of bear, I would refer you to the wildlife specialist in that area of the country or state.
Okay, and then let's see, asking if the documents that we provided will be available following the program.
I will post all those documents with the recording on my website. Lara, would you be able to do the same?
I should be able to, and I believe also in the recorded version of the webinar, the documents will also be accessible that way. So we'll definitely at least have the recording available. And you can always contact either Shannon or I to get those documents as well. We'll be happy to send them to you. Then Tara asked
Yes.
if bears can climb over
Can bears
fences.
climb over fences? I would say yes, bears can climb over fences. It probably depends on the fence, what it's made out of, and how tall it is, but in general, the answer to that question will probably be yes. They can also pull fences down. If there is a gate, they can pull the gate open. They are incredibly strong animals. When we say to secure garbage or other secure things like that, it would be more structural than just a fence. And so there are some plans for that type of thing if you're interested in it. But yes, I would say bears can climb over fences.
Yeah, I would say.
Is there a difference between Florida black bears and bears in a...
Sorry, Shannon.
I'm sorry, you can continue.
Yeah, add to that, if the extreme side of the fencing is, something that would not necessarily apply to that would be electric fencing, although that's incredibly costly, but some farmers and ranchers will take that avenue to keep the black bears out. So electric fencing can be effective, but that's not most likely what we're going to be encountering.
Yes, and then what is the estimated population of black bears? In 2002, the estimate was approximately 3,000 bears. They are currently working on new population estimates. I know they've finished a couple of the population estimates from bear management units, but I do not have that data on me today. If you're concerned about the population in your specific area of the state, I would recommend that you go ahead and call your regional office. They would be more than happy to share that information with you or connect you with someone who has it. But they are still currently working on some of the population estimates. And then I also see the question, is there a difference between Florida black bear and bears in adjoining states? That is a great question that I don't exactly have the answers to. Most of the southeastern bears are going to be black bears, all the way up into Canada actually. On the east coast, they're going to be black bears. But Florida black bears have, for a while, had unique genetics. And so I don't have a great answer to that question, but I'd be more than happy to look into it if you'd like a better answer. And that's all the questions that I can see. So Lara, it's 12:58. Would you like to close out?
Yes, I'm just sending a link from the FWC that kind of it talks a little bit about the different genetics of the Florida black bear versus just black bears in general, for those of you that are interested in learning more. The link for the recording will be sent out to your emails as soon as we're done with this. I'll get that over to Shannon, and Shannon will send that to you guys as well as the documents. So with that, let's see if the next slide. Okay, yes. So if you guys wouldn't mind taking a minute to provide your feedback online at the link above. And as we mentioned at the very beginning of the webinar, some of our other upcoming webinars in October is bats and then snakes and coyotes. If you want to register for those, the link is also on this page as well. So thank you guys for joining us for your Lunch and Learn session, and we look forward to seeing you in October. Good job, Shannon.
Thank everyone for their interest, and I hope you guys liked it.